Hello everybody, today I'm going to be reviewing The Magnificent Ambersons, which is a film directed by one of my favorite directors of all time, Orson Welles, and it came out in 1942, which was a year after Citizen Kane came out. This is a bit of a tough one to review for a myriad of reasons, which I'll get into, but I think first it's important to give you the backstory. So we all know that Orson Welles is considered, or was considered, back in the late 30s, one of the great iconoclasts. He was a genius, he was a prodigy, he basically broke every rule in the book and was just considered this great iconoclast artist. Hollywood wanted him to make a movie, and because he was so revered at the time, they gave him complete control over making Citizen Kane, which had never been done before and has never been done since. And Hollywood thought this was just such a great idea. But then they realized that it maybe wasn't such a great idea when Citizen Kane did not make very much money. Audiences did not warm up to this very avant-garde style that Citizen Kane had presented. I know that sounds really strange now because Citizen Kane is considered one of the great films ever made and all that, but you know, I mean, as we know, a lot of great art that tries to break from, you know, traditional structure, such as Citizen Kane, trying, you know, new tricks and new things, is not always something that people want to see. People like things that are familiar and that are easy, and Citizen Kane wasn't. So it took a while, many years, before people started to really warm up to it and realize that it was a great work of art. But in 1941, it just didn't make that much money. So Hollywood basically said, hold on, Mr. Welles, you have underperformed. Sorry, I'm really immature. During the editing process, Hollywood came in basically and took out over an hour of all of Orson Welles' original footage, and that's a significant amount. And also they tacked on this horrible, kind of sappy, sentimental, happy ending, which is just gross. And the end result is a mess. I mean, it's just, the characters are underdeveloped, there are scenes that just don't make sense, everything just feels like it was thrown together and there was no thought put into it. But that being said, the first, I say maybe 20-30 minutes is so good. It is an absolute masterpiece on every level, and it kills me to think what could have been if Hollywood hadn't tinkered with anything or any of Orson Welles' original creative vision. The film takes place at the turn of the century, and it's about a very socially prominent and very wealthy family called the Ambersons. And the film is basically about how time has slowly caused this family and their wealth and everything they stood for to slowly decay, and they start to lose all that they had at the peak of the Industrial Revolution, which is obviously when automobiles were starting to become popular and technology was becoming more advanced, and they're basically preparing for the 20th century. And for me, and I think it's very obvious what Welles is trying to convey to the audience, is this film is about how the passage of time kind of slowly eats away at all of the things that we cherish. It could be anything from material items, traditions, connection with other people, love relationships. And it's just about how it affects all of these characters in the ensemble. And as I said, the first half hour of the film I think is probably one of the few things that really does stick to what Welles had originally intended. And it's just, it captures this sense of wistful nostalgia, and it's got this very satirical hint to it, kind of like in Citizen Kane. It's got wit, it's very funny, but yet there's that underlying feeling of this dark, kind of painful sadness, the feeling that time is just slipping through these characters' fingers. The party scene is probably the most famous scene in the entire film, and it is by far my favorite sequence for a lot of reasons, because you really do get to see this ensemble of characters really play off each other, and you get to see the dynamics, and it's the one point in the film where they are the most developed and fully realized. Basically, the mother, Mrs. Amberson, I can't remember her name, she had fallen in love many years ago with another man, played by Joseph Cotten, but for, you know, certain circumstances came up and they didn't end up getting married, but they reunite after many years at this party. And Joseph Cotten got married to somebody else, she got married to somebody else, obviously, and they both have kids, and the two kids, who are now teenagers, meet, and they sort of kind of have this flirty thing going on. But it's not cookie cutter. I think that in a lesser writer's hands or a lesser filmmaker's hands, it would have been one of those things where everything was very standard, where the elders, the parents, would be representing the old-fashioned ways and the old traditions that were slowly decaying, and then the kids, the younger people, would be the new century, the 20th century coming, and they're hip and they're cool. But it's not like that at all. In this version, Joseph Cotton, who is the parent, he is the one who is the inventor of the automobile. And then Mrs. Amberson's son, Georgie, is the spoiled brat who is completely against the idea of having cars or any sort of new technology. He's completely opposed to it. Joseph Cotton and then George's mother obviously still have affection for one another in this scene. It's very obvious. And it's one of those things where you're watching, you're not sure if they're really going to rekindle that relationship or if they're just going to let it go. And just the way that it's shot and the way that just the silences between the two of them are just so effective. It's one of those things where you really do get emotional while you're watching it. But after, I think, the party sequence, or maybe a few minutes after, the film just becomes a bunch of very choppy, half-baked sequences that don't really have any grounding. They're just not very grounded. I found myself watching it saying, like, wait, who just died? Or, why are you so mad at him? It just, none of it was adding up because the characters were no longer given that chance to be developed. And all those scenes where maybe we would have had a chance to see who these characters really are or what happened were taken out of the film. So honestly, I would say just watch the first 30 minutes or really study the first 30 minutes if you want to see great filmmaking, because I do think it's one of Orson Welles' finest achievements. And it's honestly, this is just my personal opinion, but I think that it has more of an intimate connection on a human level than anything in Citizen Kane. And that's saying a lot because I love me some Citizen Kane. The cinematography just has a quality like all Orson Welles' films, that deep focus, very dark, shadowy, brooding feeling. And it looks almost like each image could come out of like a comic book or a manga. And the soundtrack by Bernard Herrmann is just beautiful and wistful and just, it's great. It is just, I'm having word vomit here. I'm just glad that at least some of the film was preserved for audiences and it wasn't completely destroyed by the corporate horrors of America. Damn you, establishment! But anyway, thank you all for listening to my review. If you would like to follow me on Twitter, the link is below, and you can also like my Facebook page below. And if you have any suggestions for what I should review next, please let me know. But anyway, that's it, and have a lovely day.